Okay, I feel like we're live already.
Do you? What makes
I, I can just feel it in my bones. I can feel the people
wow?
watching.
I think that people are watching because we are live, Tendai. You're right. Your bones tell you a
See?
lot of good things. We're live with episode 7 of
Yep.
I'm Empowered. Episode 7.
Episode
Oh
7.
man, my thing is
Wow.
buzzing. Sorry about that. On this beautiful Wednesday here in Tel Aviv. Tendai, how are things going in the Bay Area?
It's beautiful over here as well. Things are calm.
I'm
Things are
gonna be
opening back up too, so people are looking forward
yeah,
to kind of getting out and about, just like me. Yeah.
that's tight.
How are things
I'm
over
gonna be
there?
there next week. I'm gonna be there next week on the
Oh, really?
I arrive on the 30th. Yeah, yeah.
In that case, I'm leaving. I'm just joking.
Okay. Cool, cool,
Yeah, no,
cool.
let me know. Let me know when you're here. And we
Get a
can
studio
definitely
for the
meet up.
podcast for
I
sure.
should be here.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. We'll meet out. We'll do that. We'll do that. And it's also special. We're good here in Israel. I mean, we just had elections yesterday. So I'm really
Oh,
happy that
really?
we have probably somebody who I think is genuinely positioned to at some point be the leader of this country. I would vote for him. My
Hmm.
friend Uriya Rosenman. Uriya, how you doing, brother? Or should I say
Doing great.
Mr. Future
Very
Prime
good.
Minister?
Don't be like that. I'm very good. Thank you. It's great to be with you both here and to better meet Tande and you. Great to be with you guys.
Thanks for
Yeah, man.
joining us.
I'm really happy that you took some time to come on. I mean, we've been friends for about a year now. We've been working together with Empower Africa. Um, you know, you're such an inspiration in how you communicate, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's at our events, whether it's with different partners in the community in a one-on-one setting, but also specifically, and why we wanted to have you on today is who you are behind all of that. You know who you are as a human being and how you think. So I'm really just grateful and appreciative, that you took some time to be with us. And Tendai, you're in for a treat. You're in for a treat today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've only heard good things, so I'm looking forward to learning more about you.
Yeah,
Same here.
we usually, Uriya, we usually on the show bring in folks who are on the ground um, in the VC ecosystem, in the startup ecosystem, in the innovation community. But we felt it was really great to make an exception to that because ultimately, I'm Empowered is just about the people who are doing great things on the continent and people who have reached that moment in their journey where they decided either to push forward or move aside in order to jump into this incredible ecosystem which we're a part of, which is the African business ecosystem. So I'm really excited for us to go deep with you today. But before we get into that, I mean, I want to hear more about what it was like for you growing up in Israel and living there and living here, I should say, being a kid, growing up in the education system, doing whatever it was that you did, and just sort of to get a sense of everything leading up to that really empowering moment, man. Talk to us about growing up.
Yeah. Well, again, thanks for the opportunity. I'm gonna try to keep it, tight and authentic, because that's my main focus in life, basically. So, I grew up in a
Yeah, man.
very I grew up in a very Israeli house. Like I'm a son of dominant parents. My father was a pilot. He still is, for more than 40 years. My
Wow.
mother, she has a PhD in biophysics, and she is now in charge of developing the autonomous vehicle for General Motors, and she's like a super high achieving woman. So I grew up as a kid, with high ambitions and like, high self-esteem, wanting to be successful according to society's definitions, And in Israel, growing up is really, we're a relatively young country, surrounded by countries that some of them want to like deny our right to exist. So like the courses for a young Israeli are very much set up. You go to high school, you want to be the best performing student you can be, especially within the society that I grew up in, and eventually, right after the high school, there's the obligatory army service. So growing up where I grew up, it was really determined that if you are healthy, athletic, and you have high self-esteem, then you try to reach to the most, combatant units in the army, so you can properly defend your country, and that you can serve your country, and that you can demonstrate what a man you are. So I was on that course. I grew up in a house where the Israeli narrative was super strong. Like my father was a pilot, and my grandfather, he was one of the captains who rescued Jerusalem in the 6-day war. So for us, as a Zionist family, it was like it's a very romantic story of what is the right for Israelis to live in this part of the world, and what is our job within that kind of national responsibility to take care of the Jewish people. So a lot of pressure, a lot of strict mentality, a lot of like taking some of the things, some of the narratives throughout history, taking them for granted. Like, this is how I grew up, and this is the way I see the world. Does that make sense until now?
Yeah, that makes sense.
But when you talk about how you see the world, I'm just curious. I'm curious to ask, because I know you're super authentic, and that we're in a beautiful room here where we can ask you anything. But how you see the world, was that really something that was taught to you when you were growing up, and you feel like you just sort of embodied those lessons, or these were sort of your own perspectives from growing up in Israel, growing up in an Israeli household? Were the expectations that you were going to embody this, sort of fight for your country, be the best you can mindset, or was this something that you believe was this nature or nurture?
Yeah, it was definitely not nature. It was something that was, injected to me from my education and from my surroundings, not only the family, but also the environment where I grew up, my friends, the competition between people who are trying to be, the best, the winners, the jocks. I don't know how to call it.
Yeah.
But
right.
Yeah, I want to continue the story and to lay out what kind of transformation I've been through. So basically, up until 24, when I share my story with other people, I say that up until the age of 24, I was kind of like a mainstream douchebag. I was aspiring to what society defined as successful, really going for the mainstream, and it comes through music. It comes through the way I choose to hang out with my friends, the way I choose to pass my time, the way I value stuff. It was according to the way society does. And when I reached 24, I was in a very special place in my life. I was after being a combat officer in the IDF, in the military. I finished the very common post-army trip abroad. I was traveling for 1 year in South America, Europe, Central America also. And I started school. I started studying electrical engineering in Tel Aviv University. Because, my mother, she came from that kind of industry, and she told me, listen, you're smart enough, go study engineering. One day you'll become a manager. It's the best for you. Go do it. And I said, yeah, why not?
Wow.
I studied physics and math, and I should definitely do it. And I started studying engineering. And at the same time, I started working with underprivileged youth, kind of like a youth movement, kind of like the Scouts, but something that also integrates physical preparation for the army and, like physical training to make people stronger. I had I had teams of kids, like I had around 300 kids that I was training, maybe 40% of them girls, like teenage girls. So the teams that I trained were very diverse, and I got to influence from firsthand, like a very informal education process. And that was the first time for me that I encountered what it means to be an educator, to be somebody that is a guide and that is like a formal figure for teenagers who don't have to listen to me, and like they really don't owe me anything. They just wanted to listen to me out of just me being there and being able to present myself in an authentic way. And I just want to finish the point. That moment in my life when I was just before the age of 24, something happened to me. I discovered, through my younger brother, actually, I discovered spirituality. I started reading books about the potential development of human consciousness and human psychology. And it really blew my mind. Like the dissonance I felt between, engineering, which really didn't speak to me at all, to the satisfaction I felt from working with teenagers and like helping them change their lives by communicating authentically my weaknesses and the way I see my life today at the age of 24. That dissonance really influenced me. And together with these books that I read, I started questioning my previous way of life, my mainstream way of life, and slowly abandoning illusions that I had about myself, about how big I am, about how smart I am, about how much I understand the world. I started understanding that the adults around me, that I couldn't wait to be an adult and to be ready for the world, I started understanding that majority of the adults surrounding me, they don't know much about what's going on. Like they have problems figuring out themselves, And I started developing some kind of rationale to how I'm going to live my life. And that was like a very transformative point where I started becoming more into spirituality, more into learning myself in the universe, and less about success, society, definitions, race, competition, etc.
Wow, that's a really big
That's fascinating.
transformation there. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to sort of understand, and it's interesting, like this feeling of just incredible sort of, what do we call it, understanding and awakening, empowerment. There we would say. How do you had felt before growing up, or was this the first time you had ever had that level of sort of heightened awareness about something?
Well, there are three main things that I can share from before that kind of transformative period in my life. There are three things that occurred over and over again, which I can point on and say, this is a crucial thing to notice. The first thing I would say in general is disappointment from life. Okay, I was a spoiled kid. I had unconditional love from my parents. I had financial stability. When I wanted something, usually I would get the support to achieve it. And I was a spoiled kid. That gave me the privilege to think, wait, why are we here? I mean, what is this life? I mean, is this everything? Is it all about finding a partner, having kids, finding a job, working until I die, having my own family? I mean, I thought as a kid, I thought I was promised more than that. Like I wasn't satisfied with the routine, with the route everybody was going. So the disappointment, number one. The second thing is that I felt that even though I have all the data, all the fortune I need in order to be completely happy every day of my life, to wake up with a feeling of gratitude, I never felt that kind of feeling. All the time, something in the back of my head keeps telling me, this is not enough, you want more. And I felt like it's not about the external circumstances. It's something from within that needs to be changed. And I didn't know what it was, but definitely, the lack of happiness, the lack of satisfaction, the disappointment, that's the two first points. And the third point I must confess is that I felt that in a large portion of my life, I'm not truthful. Necessarily lie to people and say like I'm not honest, but something about personal alignment within myself. I felt like sometimes I'm just not loyal to myself. And I felt this feeling of lying, which wasn't clear to me. So those 3 points, I think, occurred over and over before in my life, you know, small points of recognition and like some sort of awakening, but, you know, like a quicksand, diving back into life, wanting to make an impression, wanting to succeed, wanting to be the best. And they just drifted away, those kind of moments, until that point of age 24, where it was like a revelation, you know?
Okay. So in this journey of spirituality, so how did you have to kind of change your environment, and how did people around you actually react? Did people notice that you actually changed?
Yeah, I mean, you know, first of all, dropping out of engineering school for a family like mine, that was like a statement, you know. It's not that I was, you know, pushed to the corner, or I got all the support I needed. I'm really fortunate when it comes to my family, but definitely that was a statement. That was like hey, family, hey guys, something is changing here. You know, I'm not going on the road. I'm choosing my own path, and that was my first, you know, like my first search, my first exploration. Second of all, I think that my relationships with friends and my surroundings in general, they started changing a little bit. I started noticing what kind of people in my life contribute to the process of internal growth, and what kind of people they just absorb my energy and basically, you know, just from an authentic place. They don't serve my long-term goals. And I know that's not the way we're used to look at our relationships, like who's serving me. Definitely not. But it also relates to how am I contributing to them? Is it all about the fun? Is it all about
Yes.
certain, you know, aspects, or is it more about how are we helping each other maximize this time on our time on this planet? So I think that it also affected the relationships. And third and final, I can say that it started changing the way I spend my time. I started doing more reading, a lot more reading. I started going into meditation very deeply. I started going into yoga, which until then I thought it's like, you know, for weirdos. And then I thought, how could have I not been into yoga? You know, it's like it's just physical health. And yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then when you dropped electrical engineering, there are countless other careers or professions that you could have pursued. So what career path did you choose, and what led you to choose that career path?
Yeah, so, you know, I spoke about the dissonance between engineering to the work with to my work with teenagers. So it influenced me so much that I started going directly into education. And let me explain why. The spiritual process I've been through allowed me to understand that part of why I am what I am right now is because of the education I received, and because that mentality of our world that kids need to grow up fast and be proper adults. You know, like the adults know. So as a kid, you need to learn very well to adapt to society and to become a very high quality adult. And once I understood
Yeah.
that this is like a misconception, this is a huge misconception, I understood that I can influence by being that part in the chain where I communicate with teenagers and I'm telling them, listen, nope, nope. You're not supposed to be a proper adult. You need to find your own path. I'll tell you secrets. Now I know adults don't know what's up. You need to find your own way. And I just had the opportunity. Life served me that opportunity when they gave me that kind of awakening when I was working with teenagers. And I loved the influence I had on their lives so much that I started going into education more and more. And let me explain what kind of influence I had. You know, I helped, besides training them physically and mentally, I showed them themselves. I showed them I gave names to the internal psychological processes they've been through during those teenage years. And I took them to their homes with my car. I helped them with work. I helped them with, you know, family issues they've been going through with their parents, with their brothers. And that position I had of like a grown-up, which is like a big brother, but also I don't have to do everything I do. I only do it from love. they really became committed to me. I became committed to them, and it really made me see and understand the influence I am able to have when I'm in the right place and when I do things that I'm good at and that I'm passionate about. And that made me really dive into education and do a lot more stuff.
Wow. So then you realize this about yourself, professionally, in terms of the impact and influence you can have through education. I love what you're saying about holding up a mirror and giving labels to these things. I think this is really, really, really critical. That notion of radical candor and truth, which I'm sure is something that is not just applied to other people, but that you've applied to yourself, both personally and professionally through that. But in terms of the next steps, right? You drop out of it. You drop out of educate. Sorry, you drop out of engineering school, and you realize this. What do you then decide to go study?
Yeah, so as part of that kind of process of letting go of the illusions that I was holding on to for 24 years, I told myself,
Right.
you know, it's kind of cliche, but the universe will guide me, you know. So a friend I met at work, working with the kids, he had his own NGO. He was the CEO of an NGO, a foundation that is taking underprivileged kids who have financial issues and domestic issues, family issues, and they are giving them science and entrepreneurship and math education, you know, like STEM education. They wanted to take the underprivileged kids and give them the engineering, give them the abilities that sometimes the formal education in Israel is not able to give them. And I told this guy, listen, you're great. He opened up to me. He told me amazing things about himself. And I was, you know, I was in that phase where every conversation I'm having with people is deep and interesting, and like I was in the zone. And I told them, listen, I just dropped out of engineering. Whatever you want me to do, I will do. You want me to come be a cleaning man? I would come be a cleaning man in your NGO, whatever you need. And he took me to be a project manager for a new project called Math in the Hood. You know, like we went into a specific neighborhood, middle of the country, where you know, the financial stability for majority of the families is relatively low, and we gave math education, cool math education, like innovative math education, to those kind of kids. I'm talking elementary school kids, and I led this project together with another amazing woman from our NGO, and it was relatively successful. In a short time, a new position opened up, and I got to become a technological center manager. I ran a technological center for the NGO. I started getting more budget and more responsibility and more, you know, I started becoming teacher of teachers and not only teacher of kids. I taught math, I taught physics. I was like personal guide for a bunch of students in my responsibility area. And then after 2 years in the NGO, I became like a division manager. I was in charge of the whole operations of the northern division of the NGO. And this is where I had like $1 million budget, 21 employees under me, which some of them are volunteers, some of them are employees, some of them are scholarship getters. And this was a huge experience. It was really 3 amazing years from my life and from my professional growth.
Wow. I mean, that's really amazing to hear. I think one question I have is, like, for this Math in the Hood program, is it still operating? And are you also still in contact with some of those kids that you also helped to teach? And how have you seen them grow since you first began working with them?
Tendai, such a fun question. First of all, I have in my room a poster that some of the kids from back in the days they made for me, and I'm definitely in contact with a lot of them, and they are already, you know, some of them are already 24 years old. I'm 31 today, and they are already grown-ups. They come visit me at my house. We drink a beer together. it's really amazing actually to stay in touch with them, because I was able to touch some of their crucial points in their lives. And the Math in the Hood still exists, just in a different kind of setting with a different name, but it still exists today, and it's even more successful. I can say that a lady that was working with me, a very talented lady that I brought her to work for an NGO, is today, she is the CEO of the NGO, and I'm proud of that also.
Wow.
And also, you know, the previous CEO, which was my friend, he gave me such a free hand, and he believed in me so much. He was such a great friend for me that he let me build my own curriculums and to build my own content, you know, because he says, you're not only an educator that is, you know, managing the team, but if you feel like some content isn't working, change it. Talk to the kids, give them what they want. So I want to give like an explanation of how education was done so open-mindedly, you know. I bought a course for my kids. I had a group of like 12 kids. They were promising kids within the youth village that I was operating, and they had a course of Arduino. Arduino is like the combination between hardware and software. It's like a microchip that you get to program it, and then it does something with the light bulb and with the wires, and it's like the basics of hardware and software for young teenagers. And I gave it to them, and I thought it's going to blow their mind. You know, they're the promising class of this youth village. They should be interested in technology and STEM education and engineering. It's gonna light them up, you know. And after a few lessons, I saw that the guy, the instructor, he keeps coming back to me and says, "Listen, they're just doing a mess. They don't listen to me. They don't want this." So I storm into the class and I go, "Guys, what's up? Why are you not listening to the instructor?" And they say, "We don't care about Arduino. It's not interesting for us." And I was broken from this because I thought it's gonna change their lives, you know. So what I did was I asked them, "What is interesting for you? Tell me what is interesting for each and every one of you right now." And they couldn't tell me. They really couldn't tell me. They didn't know what their passion was. They were young teenagers. So I went back to my CEO, my friend. I told him the situation. I asked his permission to come up with my own curriculum. And then we did a year-long program, you know, like like it was a improvisation. How do you, like, yeah, I mean, it came from my head. Nobody designed it for us.
Yeah.
And the idea was we were going into a year-long program where we learn how to research, how to manage data on the cloud. And each and every one of them was supposed to do research on one topic that is interesting for them. And eventually, the end of the year is going to be a TED Talk where, you know, a bunch of 8th graders are going to deliver a TED Talk on a topic that they research, they love, and they care about completely. So they learned a bunch of practical skills on how to utilize knowledge, how to look for knowledge, and then how to arrange it in a way that you can communicate it outside in a proper way. And it was a blast. Like the whole youth village talked about it. Their parents came, they thanked us. This program that we invented that day, that I wrote down that day, still exists today, 6-7 years from then. And it's really a constructive program within the NGO's character, because it demonstrates how we adapt our education to the children's needs, you know? So I'm very proud of that.
Wow. Wow. It's so cool,
really
like
great.
the sort of you know, the way how, like, you know, you were talking about in the beginning how these sort of lessons of being strong and having a path and serving your country were lessons that were ingrained with you as a child. But then even after this moment, this revelation at the age of 24, you're doing something kind of similar with what I'm hearing here. But you're doing it in a way that brings so much more joy to you and joy to others. You know, talk a little bit about kind of how that as you know, how that is manifested, and how, like, personally, you know, and spiritually, this like that journey has been in sort of reclaiming this independence and this sort of control over your own path.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that I want to say this. I grew up thinking that I know stuff. I grew up aspiring for certainty. Like be a proper adult.
Certainty.
Know who you are. Know what your job here. Know the most you can. And spirituality gave me the confidence to not be confident. Spirituality gave me the understanding that I don't understand.
Right.
Spirituality gave me the knowledge that I do not know everything that is out there and that I most certainly would not know. And that kind of perspective, that kind of state of mind really influenced the way I do things. And I want to touch your question by elaborating on how this developed. Like I went to engineering because I thought I knew, like that would be the direction for me. But then when I left engineering and went into education, I almost went into the unknown. And then I jumped from place to place. After 3 years within that NGO, I went back to school and I decided to study psychology and business. Psychology for understanding, the human nature, understanding my nature and how it connects to the universe, and business to understand how humankind has developed this world that we live in, and to be able to navigate it in a smart, efficient way. Okay? So by combining psychology and business, I got a lot of practical tools. And I'm not a psychologist right now, and I'm not like I don't aspire to be a businessman, but definitely these kind of tools and knowledge are helping me today to be an effective member of society, and a contributing member of society. And my next job was working for Stand With Us. You talk about serving the country. So part of identity, huge part of my identity is me being an Israeli. It's part of my family. It's part of everything that we've been through as the Jewish people. And I wanted to get deep into that. So working for Stand With Us, an NGO that does education about Israel, allowed me to meet people that hate Israel around the world, allowed me to meet people that are taking their Israeliness for granted, and to just educate, to tell my story, to understand my story, to learn from my family, from the other Israelis I meet. I was the head of the programs for IDF and soldiers. So I basically delivered workshops and lectures to thousands of soldiers and pre-soldiers all over the country. Talked about the meeting, the potential encounter with Israel's problematic image abroad, talked about what it means to serve in the IDF, talked about how to communicate the Israeli stories to people who do not know Israel. And that really influenced who I am and helped me understand the other narratives that are part of this situation in the Middle East, that are part of our story. And it really influenced my life.
Okay. So then you said that you studied psychology and business, but you said you're not a businessman, but you are quite involved in business within Africa. So can you tell us about your transition into actually working within Africa, and exactly what sector are you in, or what industry are you involved in on the continent?
Yeah, your questions actually align perfectly with my, with my timeline, because after working for 2 years for Stand With Us, an NGO educating about Israel, I was about to finish school, and I met this guy, Shai Bernstein, who was the VP of Dev and Operations for Empower Africa. He delivered a lecture with another biz dev from our at that time. Her name was Yael, and they gave a lecture about Empower Africa, what they do and what their relevancy is. And when I listened to this lecture, I thought, wow, I actually know nothing about Africa. Africa, it's a continent, a lot of countries. I don't know the number. I didn't know the number back then, obviously. And it was really mind-blowing for me to hear this story. And I went and I started sniffing around, through LinkedIn and through some personal connections. I discovered it's a young company and that they're doing something very cool. And I started, and I listened, basically. And then a series of meetings started to occur where, you know, Shai and Ezi, the founder, they are meeting me, they're telling me the story, and I'm telling them about myself, about who I am, about the transition I've personally been through, about my work at Stand With Us, educating about Israel, telling the very complicated story of the Israeli-Arab conflict and you know, the aspirations for peace and for a better future. And I think that Ezi and Shai meeting me, they appreciated my authenticity and the way I communicate what is important for me. And they said, listen, man, we are in the business of driving business in Africa. We want to make Africa prosper, but not with donations and aid, but rather with trade and business making. You know, believing in the people, shaking hands and driving business to the continent. And I fell in love with the idea. Although I was completely satisfied with my job at Stand With Us, and I felt that I'm, you know, actually doing something great. I loved the idea, and I decided to join the company. And today I am a business development manager within the agriculture team. I'm in charge of all relationships and you know, business relating agriculture in Africa.
Wow, that's awesome. And I especially like the philosophy. Oh, sorry, Caleb. I think there's a lag.
No, just wow. Go ahead, Tendai.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that I definitely resonate with the idea that Africa needs to empower itself in terms of trade and business instead of relying on charity. So that was definitely something that I resonate with. So one question I have within agriculture is, why do you think agriculture is key for the development of Africa, or do you think so?
Yeah, of course I do. And I heard to I didn't know. I'm not an ag person. I was never into agriculture. I wasn't an agronomist either, and I didn't know anything about Africa. So that's like, you know, I need to confess here. I had to learn the hard way, and that's what I've been doing in the past year and a half, being with Empower Africa, being in the company. You know, like if we speak simple about it, the world is becoming a smaller place. The human population is growing, the world is becoming a smaller place, and food is an issue. It's not becoming an issue, it's an issue today. People suffer from starvation, and it's going to get worse and worse as the human population keeps growing and we have less available land for farming. The huge majority of available land for farming is in sub-Saharan Africa. There's also the rainforests, but like the world is not ready to cut them, and we need them for our breath and for our survival. So the vast majority of available lands for farming are in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's not only that agriculture is in charge of what is on our plate 3 times a day, but it's also a very strong leverage for business making and for profitable, impactful business. We need, as a global entity, as the humankind, as the human race, we need to tackle the issue of food security. And agriculture is the way to do it, especially if it's done in a smart way, effective way, when it involves job creation and smart allocation of resources. So once I discovered that, I understood that if I want to do actual business and not to just talk about doing business, I need to be where I'm most relevant. And I started learning what it means to drive agriculture business in Africa and to learn how to communicate it to our partners. So basically, I'm just going to finish up here, Caleb. Basically, what I'm trying to what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to meet as many people as possible, all the different stakeholders relevant for doing business in Africa. You know, investors, multinational companies, local companies, NGOs, anyone who's relevant, and to understand, to learn what they need, what their ambitions and goals are, what are the the biggest challenges they're facing, and to understand how our team of agricultural experts are able to solve those challenges and to tackle these challenges in a smart way, in a technological way, implementing new innovative agtech, and to basically not only make profit from doing agricultural business, but also making impactful business and changing lives for the better, which makes me feel like I'm a very comfortable, authentic businessman. I don't come to people and try to sell myself and to sell my product, but I have the privilege of looking to someone in the eye and saying, listen, let's do business together. Everybody is winning from it, and that's a great place to be as a business person.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is so powerful, Uriya, because my belief about business in Africa is that it's not just our imperative to see a more prosperous Africa in our lifetime, but it's our imperative to work with Africa to make a more prosperous world at large. And that sounds exactly like what you're doing and what your mindset is. It's not about what we're doing for anybody, but it's about what we're doing together for all of us. But man, I want to get deep a little bit for a minute before we jump into the nuances of agribusinesses and some of the great projects that you have. I think we might do. It says you're okay. Anyhow, you're with us. You're with us. Tight. So I want to sort of understand a little bit. Like you were working in the army, then you're working in education, and then all of a sudden, here you are in this. You say you don't want to be in business. You strongly identify as Israeli. I want to go a little bit deeper into that, moment when you really just felt empowered to sort of kind of go off course a little bit, right? Like you've said, there's no real clear path, but you sort of did, I think you would agree with this, go and I did it too, right? We all sort of have, go a little bit off course to focus on business in Africa. I want to understand a little bit more about like that specific moment, but also I think a year into the journey, sort of how does working with Africa, working in agriculture, sort of nourish your soul and your psychology and your wellness, which is such a important part of your identity.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Caleb. Thanks. I identify as an Israeli educator. My dream in the future is to establish a school, a new innovative school based on a self-developed education system that I've been working on in the past 7 years. I'm writing every day, so my dream is to be that kind of person, and maybe to even establish like a settlement. I want to live in a place where it serves the way I want to live my life. So that's my dream, and it's definitely unrelated to doing business. But when I tell the story about becoming empowered, which is the theme of this podcast, then when I met Shai and Ezi, I discovered that there is Africa. I never had the chance to meet people that lived in Africa and that are part of the real African culture. We have people from African descent in Israel, and I have friends who are originally from Ethiopia. Their families are from Ethiopia, and they're great people. But they have Israeli nature within them. They have Jewish identity within them, and I didn't have the privilege of meeting real African people in my life because this is how the world was constructed for me as a young child. And I worked for an Israeli NGO. I was educating about Israel, but I was living my cubicle. I was living my metaphorical cubicle, and I wanted to jump out of that cubicle. And Ezi and Shai gave me that opportunity to be on Zoom calls all day with people from cultures and from countries, 54 diverse countries, which I knew nothing about. So I think that the state of mind of learning and wanting to know more and to experience more and to expand my horizons is something that guides me all along the way. I didn't know a lot about agriculture. I didn't know a lot about Africa when I joined the company a year and a half ago. And today, I can't say that I know a lot because I'm definitely not an expert, but I can navigate the ecosystem. I can understand people's needs. I can match the right solutions to the right problems. I know products and services. I know the real world problems on the ground.
No,
I think
continue. I'm just really. No,
Yes,
Uriya,
Tendai.
sorry, Tendai. Uriya, you were finishing up a point. Sorry, I'm just empowered by what you're saying, so I'm just
Yeah,
saying yes, sort of.
sometimes the responsive attitude makes me feel like I'm over talking, so I apologize.
No. That that's why we brought you here. I wanted to hear you talk.
Yeah, so I feel like you know we are a very interesting company. We are definitely looking for revenue or for profits, but we are a values driven
Sure.
company, and it puts me in a very unique position because my success is also measured by getting to know people and learning about their needs and being able to connect people to the right solutions. So it's not that I'm so much profit focused and that I meet people and like, how can I sell them? How can I show my boss that I'm worthy of the salary that I'm being paid? But I'm also about really listening, opening up to people and creating the synergy by connecting people and bringing people together to talk business in a trustworthy way, with good reputation and with a good heart. So I think that really empowered me to understand that my next step in my career is definitely business oriented, but it comes from a very clean, authentic place. And I really learn a lot, like every meeting I go,
Yeah.
I turn off everything around me, I look in the eyes of the people that I talk to, and I'm fascinated each and every time I learn something new. It's exhausting. It's really challenging because I really need to learn. It's not that I just, do. I'm not in doing. I'm in more of an observing state of mind, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I can really tell that you love what you're doing, right? And so, I mean, as part of Empower Africa, in terms of empowering Africa, part of it is actually helping to shape its story and kind of to change the narrative that has been spouted that's largely false in many parts of the world. So, based on your more recent experience, just learning more about Africa, how do you think we need to change how we educate young people about Africa and the opportunities in Africa? And do you think that even when you take on a more formal role as an educator in the future, how will you actually tell your students about Africa and the opportunities there?
That's a great question. Uh, I need to think about it much more in order to give you a proper answer, Tenda. Really, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to pull from the sleeve. But if I must, because
Yeah.
it's a podcast, first thing I would do, which is pretty obvious, is to
We can always have you back.
Yeah, definitely. So first thing I would do is to make the people that I work with or educate. I don't want to sound condescending, but the people that are involved within my educational process, I need them to understand that Africa is a continent. The African people is something that does not exist. Each country has their own culture, their own history, their own nuances, a lot of languages, a lot of different aspects to the way of life. And for me, knowing that was it wasn't mind blowing, but I came to an understanding that it's an obvious fact. But it really opened my horizons to the diversity. And I think that such a huge part of the way I grew up is being educated and taking for granted some of the assumptions that I was giving through mainstream media and mainstream cinema and Hollywood and all kinds of
Mm.
I don't want to say bullshit, but maybe stereotypes, stereotypes and
Yeah.
stuff that are based on just fear, a lack of knowledge, and lack of education.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that I would do is to share the basic stuff that I know about Africa and the stuff that I think everyone in the world should
Yeah.
knowledge that I think everyone in the world should pursue. But the second thing, and this is not specifically Africa related, but it is it is the notion of doubting and looking for more than one resource and understanding that there is always another narrative that you are not exposed to, and like encouraging young people to research, encouraging young people to get different perspectives. The last thing I would mention here is that, you know, some of the people that I do business with, they tell me, don't use that kind of sentence because it's a cliche. But I am so much comfortable using this sentence that I'm going to bring up now. Africa is the future.
Bring it.
Africa is the future, and it only relates to the numbers. You know, 1.3 billion today are supposed to double in 20 years or so, or 30 years or so, and that's a significant portion of the world, a huge portion of the world. And when you think of it from like a holistic perspective, when you look at it from above, today it seems like, okay, I don't have a lot of point of contact with Africa, but in the future, majority of the food that we eat is going to be produced in Africa. And a lot of not only traditional agriculture, but also the most advanced technologies are going to come from the young population right now, being young people in Africa. So that's the three main things that I would say about that.
Okay, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just we're speaking with a real sage here, you know, somebody who gets how to do business, gets how to relate with people. It's interesting, sort of how you're questioning everything, but still coming to these really powerful convictions. You know, as a part of your journey, you know, the balance between the convictions and the curiosity, I think, are just really kind of strong drivers, and I'm learning a lot about them through this discussion. I learn every time that we have a conversation like this, Uriya. But bringing it, you know, back to agriculture, like, I mean, what do we need? What do we need to do? Like, I don't know, Tendai, you saw last night that, I mean, it was blown up on Twitter, but there were those African startups that presented to Y Combinator, right? Did you see about that, Tendai?
Yep.
And, you know, Uriya's here. Okay, so yesterday was Y Combinator's demo
Can you
day.
expand? Mm-hmm.
Y Combinator is like the world-leading startup accelerator, bar none. It was a really exciting day yesterday in the Twitterverse about, you know, 10 African startups, the most ever, presenting at Y Combinator's demo day in front of, you know, their community. Not a single one of the startups there was directly related to ag tech or food security. I think 8 out of 10 of them were even fintech solutions. And Uriya, you know, is telling us that Africa is the future, but if we don't develop, you know, the food security in sub-Saharan Africa, or develop the agriculture ecosystem, like, you know, it doesn't matter how fancy our fintech solutions are, but like, we have to put food on our table. So, you know, like, Uriya, I want to hear sort of just your thoughts about that journey, but also, like, it's interesting, you know, because you talk about being you know, there's no such thing as being a real adult, yet you have this maturity about you, but this real sort of sense of responsibility. I want to hear just kind of your sort of thought about the importance, right, and the sort of weight that's kind of on your shoulders to drive these solutions and make sure that, you know, we do see more ag tech and food security companies at a place like Y Combinator, and just to boost the agriculture ecosystem in general. And sort of, you know, other than obviously yoga and eating healthy, you know, let's talk about, you know, the solutions that you have to deal and just, you know, stay humble and focused and, you know, energized through this incredibly important work that you're doing. And through that, hopefully shed a little bit of light and inspiration onto our listeners here that, you know, may also be at sort of a juncture or an empowering moment or a position in their life where they're enlightened or you know, kind of reevaluating things. Talk about the opportunity, talk about the future, and share a little bit of wisdom with us, brother.
Yeah. I'm going through some like therapy right now in my life. I'm super happy about it. Like, paying someone to help me uncover myself, like to start peeling
Wow.
myself, slice by slice, and to start finding essence. So I found out that I'm kind of an intensive guy, like I take things very seriously. I have this sense of importance, like I have some kind of mission on this earth, and that's sometimes an illusion. It's part of my anxieties, it's part of my fears from life, and so I do come out sometimes as like a bit intense. And when you talk about like a real adult, maturity, I was just pointing out that I believe that adults don't know what's up. They don't know how to live their life properly because there is no right way. So I do come as an intense person, but I take things less as like less for granted and less in certainty, but more in a curious way and in a playful way. When we talk, you talked about agriculture and about Y Combinator and the lack of agtech. So first of all, objection. I want to say Africa is full of agtech companies, startups, very promising, very interesting, with a lot of talented African entrepreneurs, amazing people with amazing solutions, out of the box thinking. The fact that they didn't get to Y Combinator, that's a different thing, and maybe you should ask somebody who's more experienced in that sense. But I want to say that there is the notion of agriculture is traditionally the biggest part of African countries' GDP in average, right? So agriculture, when I speak to young Africans, and I'm talking about diverse people from diverse countries, I get the sense that agriculture is not sexy. Agriculture is not sexy anymore because it's a traditional line of work. It's something that people do in the field, out of the city. And people, when they think about, like the Western mentality and the way to live a prosperous life and to make big money and to start like achieving something and doing something with yourself from a Western perspective, then they think about technology, they think about, like the futuristic perspective, and agriculture becomes less sexy and less relevant. And I believe this is why Y Combinator, the best 10, the chosen 10 startups to present in the Y Combinator this time weren't connected to agtech. Now, for that reason, specifically, I believe it is super important to push forward agriculture business in Africa. It's going to take care of our future when it comes to food security and job creation. A lot of jobs can be created through agriculture, even when you take into consideration the implementation of ag technologies. A lot of jobs, a lot of opportunities to flourish in that sense. And also, lands, as we said before, available land is reducing, and Africa is going to be the #1 go-to continent when it comes to available land for farming. And the third thing I want to say is we are looking for, like, the world is slowly adapting to making a different kind of business mentality. We don't go necessarily to maximize profit, even in the cost of damaging people's lives or exploiting local populations, but rather we are looking to combine the maximum profit with the maximum positive impact on local populations. And I think agriculture contains all of that possibilities. Profitable business, investing in ag tech, in machinery, and in different kind of crops, which are completely necessary to so many different kinds of industries, but also creating jobs for the locals, giving food to the locals, and creating a solution that is wide across the entire agricultural value chain. And I will give one example, which I think is crucial, and it demonstrates my and our, maybe the Empower Africa's ag team, our way of thinking. Mm-hmm. In a specific country in Africa, there are many different technological solutions for farmers to have better know-how, better best practices, better techniques of actual growing and farming. And they have a lot of solutions for the financial parts and aspects of the agriculture, access to markets, access to loans, right? So these kind of solutions are very much mature already. And farmers are ready to develop to the next stage. And now we did an analysis and we understood, so what is missing? What is missing is the logistics, and logistics is also something that is being tackled right now by many different startups and amazing entrepreneurs. But specifically, we understood that there's a problem with aggregation from smallholder farmers because they have less access to loans, less access to finances, and less access to markets. So there's a problem of aggregation from smallholder farmers for their crops. And obviously, post-harvest loss, a lack of distribution, lack of quality assurance, like what are the standards of crops and agriculture that we are growing. So we figured out a solution where we develop warehouses, kind of like, a social distribution centers where we are able to aggregate, reduce post-harvest loss, we do quality assurance, we do proper storage, we guarantee the income for the farmers, but we are also making the profit from the margins by selling it, something that is high quality and that is assured and insuranced and guaranteed. And I think that kind of innovative state of mind, empowering smallholder farmers, but being able to translate into profit, I think that's the future of agriculture in Africa.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think, like you said, technology is really, really transforming the agriculture business that's based in Africa.